His hand closed around my throat in the dark before I even saw him. The corridor was so tight our gears scraped the bulkheads, pipes rattling overhead as the submarine shuddered under pressure. My back slammed against cold steel. Air vanished. Somewhere behind me, water forced its way through a damaged hatch, rushing across the deck in icy waves. Gunfire cracked through the narrow passage, deafening in the confined space. My team was down the line, separated by sealed, watertight doors and flooding compartments. No room to fall back. No room to breathe. My hand shot to his wrist, not clean, not perfect, fighting for leverage in a space barely wider than our shoulders. I twisted, boots slipping on the wet deck, forcing his weight sideways into a valve cluster. The impact stunned him long enough for me to break free, dragging in one burning breath. Contact. Close. I rasped into comms, voice tight, controlled. I am Lieutenant Commander Raven Callahan, Naval Special Warfare. And this mission had already gone wrong. The Virginia-class boat was taking on water. Hostiles were inside, and Fleet Command had just transmitted a single word through the static. Compromised. This wasn't interception. It was containment. Someone had lured us into the hull for a reason. 36 hours earlier, we slipped beneath the surface before dawn, the Virginia-class fast attack submarine cutting silently through black water. No moon. No horizon. Just pressure and machinery humming through steel. Inside, space was tight shoulders brushing pipes, boots thudding softly on the narrow deck as we moved in single file toward the lockout trunk. No wasted words, just breath, gear checks, and quiet focus. Our mission came from Fleet Command, intercept a compromised U.S. submarine platform reported stolen during covert transfer, recover sensitive fire control encryption hardware, and confirm whether hostile forces had gained launch authority. On paper, resistance expected, minimal. Quick breach, secure, and extract. But something felt wrong long before we reached the target. The ocean teaches you patterns, sound, movement, rhythm. And when something doesn't fit, you listen. The intel was too clean. No scattered transmissions, no defensive pings. A stolen war machine sitting quiet in contested water? That wasn't normal. Chief Maya Torres noticed it too. As we prepped for insertion, she leaned closer, voice low through the headset. "Ma'am, noise profile's wrong. Feels staged." I didn't argue. At 8200 hours, we breached through the outer hatch. The interior greeted us with silence so complete it felt unnatural. No patrol movement. No alarms. Only the constant vibration of a submarine still alive under the ocean. Tight passageways forced us into a slow advance. Mercer covering forward angles through pipe breaks. Hale scanning internal signals. Brooks maintaining rear security. Then we found the first sign. Blood. Dark stains smeared along the deck near an engine access panel. Not fresh, but not old enough to ignore. No bodies. No signs of evacuation. Just absence. Someone had already been here. And they hadn't left willingly. Hale dropped to one knee beside a maintenance junction, plugging into the local system through his wrist interface. Internal systems are active, but segmented, he whispered. Manual overrides restricted. Lockouts layered. That wasn't how a damaged submarine behaved. Then our comms flickered, just a brief crackle at first. Then again, slight signal distortion, like someone touching the channel without fully breaking it. Hale froze. That interference isn't external. A pause. Then, more quietly, it's coming from inside the boat, which meant whoever controlled this submarine wasn't hiding from us. They were watching us. The overhead lights dimmed briefly, then steadied. Somewhere deep in the hull, a watertight door cycled, metal grinding echoing through the tight compartments. Not random. Controlled. Mercer shifted position, weapon steady, eyes scanning through narrow sight lines between valve clusters. Torres tightened her grip, body angled toward the forward passage. Brooks checked our rear, breathing slow and even. No one spoke, because we all understood the same truth at the same time. This wasn't a recovery operation. It was a prepared environment, a shaped battlefield. And somewhere inside the submarine, someone already knew exactly where we were moving. Someone was controlling the fight and waiting for us. The first blast came from beneath the deck, sharp, violent, contained, but powerful enough to throw us off balance in the narrow passage. The overhead lights died instantly, plunging the compartment into thick mechanical darkness. For half a second there was nothing but the ringing in my ears and the deep groan of stressed steel. Then automatic fire tore through the corridor. Short, disciplined bursts, controlled spacing, clean angles. Not random, not desperate. Whoever was firing knew submarine combat, knew how sound carried, how movement echoed in tight steel tubes. These were trained operators. "Contact front," Mercer snapped, already moving. She dropped low behind a pipe array and fired through a narrow gap between valve housings. One hostile collapsed into the water, rushing across the deck before the second burst reached us. Torres pulled Brooks behind a bulkhead lip, returning controlled fire down the corridor. I moved forward, not fast, not reckless, but deliberate, because in spaces this tight, hesitation kills faster than bullets. A muzzle flash lit the passage for a fraction of a second. And what I saw didn't make sense. Plate carriers, optics, weapon systems, U.S., military grade, not imitation, authentic, either stolen or supplied. "Hail," I called, breath tight. "Confirm." "I'm reading encrypted friendly frequency chatter," he said, voice strained. They knew our approach vector. Routes compromised. Another explosion shook the submarine deeper this time. Somewhere below, a pressure seam failed. Seconds later, icy seawater forced through a damaged compartment and surged into the corridor, slamming against our legs, dragging debris and spent casings across the deck. The boat was taking on water. Fast. Mercer shifted left, firing 2 controlled shots to suppress movement near a torpedo storage rack. Torres leaned out just long enough to pin another hostile behind a sealed hatch. Brooks stabilized our rear, checking pressure levels and air mix while keeping her weapon trained down the passage. But the enemy didn't rush us. They advanced slowly, methodically, like they were herding. The water climbed past our boots, swirling dark and cold. Emergency lighting flickered dim red, barely cutting through the steam rising from ruptured piping. The submarine groaned again, deep, metallic, under growing ocean pressure. "Hail, status." "Internal compartment lock cycling," he answered, fingers working fast over his interface. "Manual override denied. Someone's controlling door seals, lighting, and pressure routing." Controlling the battlefield. Another watertight hatch slammed shut somewhere behind us, cutting retreat. Then another ahead, forcing direction. Containment. They weren't trying to kill us quickly. They were shaping movement, guiding us deeper. And then the worst signal hit. Our comm channel to Fleet Command died. No feed, no extraction ping, no tactical relay. Just static. We were alone inside a compromised submarine, flooding, under coordinated attack from enemies who knew exactly how we fought. Another burst ricocheted off the bulkhead near my shoulder. I dropped, returned 2 precise shots, and pulled back behind a valve column as water surged higher around my knees. Mercer's voice came low through comms. "They're repositioning ahead, tight formation, defensive, guarding something, or someone." The submarine shuddered again, stronger this time, steel complaining under pressure as the compartment filled inch by inch. Air grew heavier. Movement slowed under freezing water and tightening space. We weren't just under attack. We were inside a controlled kill box, sealed in a sinking war machine, with trained hostiles closing in and no support coming. No retreat, no extraction, only steel, water, and war. Torres took the hit because of my call. I had ordered the push-tight corridor, low visibility, move before they sealed the next hatch. The moment we broke cover, a burst cut through the steam. Torres jerked sideways, her shoulder plate cracking as the round punched through the edge seam. She didn't cry out, just slammed against the bulkhead and dropped to one knee, weapon still up. "Hit left shoulder," she forced through clenched teeth. Guilt hit harder than the gunfire. Wrong timing. My call. But there was no space for regret in a flooding submarine. "Brooks, move," I snapped. Under active fire and rising water, Brooks dropped beside Torres, hands steady, sealing the wound and injecting a fast coagulant. Bleed slowing. She's mobile, but not full strength. Steam blasted from a ruptured line overhead, fogging the compartment and killing visibility. Mercer cursed softly. Optics blind, thermal useless in this heat. One of our biggest advantages. Gone. "Hail, doors," I called. "Trying," he answered, breath tight. internal control rejecting override, bulkheads cycling in sequence, someone's isolating compartments one by one, a steel hatch slammed shut behind us, hard, final, then another forward, containment. They weren't trying to finish us fast. They were compressing us, hunting slow. Water climbed to mid-thigh, freezing and heavy, dragging every step. The submarine groaned under deep pressure, metal flexing somewhere below. Emergency lights flickered dim red, barely cutting through the steam. Then Mercer saw movement through a narrow pipe gap. "Ma'am, starboard compartment." No weapons raised. I pushed forward, weapon ready, forcing through the water toward a half-sealed hatch. Inside, containment cages welded into the compartment walls. And people. 3 Navy technicians. Alive, but barely. Wrists bound. Faces bruised. Exhaustion hollowing their eyes. "They forced us, made us run the system," one whispered. Hale moved fast, scanning the nearby console. "Ma'am, fire control vault is active. They're staging encrypted launch authorization." This submarine wasn't just captured, it had been repurposed. A mobile strike platform waiting for the final key. And we had walked straight into it. The water surged higher, slamming against our chests now. Air pressure fluctuated, breathing heavier with each cycle. Somewhere aft, metal tore with a deep, crushing roar. Another compartment failing. Time shrinking. Options narrowing. Torres stood again, pale but steady, blood soaking through her sleeve. Mercer reloaded silently in the fog. Brooks shielded the technicians behind reinforced piping. Hale kept fighting the system that refused to release control. Then they all looked at me. Not for comfort, for direction. Because leaders don't get the luxury of freezing, especially after a mistake. I steadied my breathing, forcing the guilt down where it couldn't interfere with the next decision. "Listen," I said, voice low but firm. "We're not clearing this boat, we're taking its heart. Control room holds the vault. Hale, you open it." Mercer, "Narrow angles only." Torres, "Stay tight, no hero moves." Brooks, "Keep them alive." Another violent shudder rolled through the hull, water rising, steel groaning, pressure building toward collapse. Everything was breaking. But the mission wasn't over. Not yet. Hale's head snapped up from the console, eyes sharp despite the water pushing against his chest. "I'm in their comm layer," he said, breath tight. Fragmented traffic, decrypting. Gunfire echoed faintly through the sealed compartments ahead. Steam drifted low across the overhead, mixing with the metallic taste of flooded machinery. The submarine shuddered again, deeper this time, like the ocean itself was tightening its grip. Then the transmission broke through, clear enough to cut through everything. "Primary biometric target. Callahan, maintain pressure. Do not terminate." For a second, the noise around me faded. Not the submarine, not the flooding. Just the truth settling in place. This operation wasn't built to stop a team. It was built to capture me. "Hale," I said quietly, "confirm source. Control room central systems. The heart of the boat." Torres exhaled slowly beside me, pain in her voice but fire still there. "So this whole maze was for you." "Yes." And suddenly the pieces aligned. The staged silence. The containment pattern. The refusal to flood us completely. The controlled pressure, guiding, not killing. He needed me alive. Memories surfaced. Operation Iron Veil 2 years earlier. We dismantled a covert network trafficking stolen U.S. weapons tech through black maritime channels. We burned their infrastructure, seized their data vaults, cut off their leadership. All but one. Codename Viper, strategist, patient, known for designing battles before the first shot was fired. He didn't chase targets. He constructed environments where targets had nowhere else to go. And now I was inside one. "Hale," I said, "why keep me alive?" He scanned the system again, fingers moving fast. Then he looked up, realization hard in his voice. "Vault lock is biometric, command-grade authorization, retina and handprint. That's you, ma'am. Without it, the fire control key stays sealed." So that was it. He didn't want me dead outside the submarine. He needed me inside it. Needed me close enough to open the vault. The hunter wasn't closing in to kill. He was waiting to unlock. The submarine trembled violently again, water surging higher, cold and relentless. Lights flickered weakly, shadows twisting across steel walls. Somewhere deep in the hull, pressure groaned like something about to break. But something inside me shifted too, because once you understand the battlefield, it stops being a trap and becomes a map. I studied the water flow, the timing of hatch seals, the rhythm of enemy movement. Patterns emerged where chaos had been. He thought pressure would control us, thought fear would slow us, thought containment would break us before we reached him. He was wrong, because hunters become vulnerable the moment prey stops running. I turned to my team, wounded, exhausted, soaked in freezing seawater, yet still standing. Torres, bleeding but steady. Mercer, silent and focused through the fog. Brooks, guarding lives behind us. Hale, fighting a war of signals inside a dying machine. No one looked afraid. They looked ready. "This isn't recovery anymore," I said quietly. "This is target capture. He needs the vault opened. That's his weakness." A pause. Then stronger, "We take control room. Hale opens the vault, but only when I say. Mercer controls angles. Torres holds tight. Brooks keeps them breathing." The submarine shuddered again, harder now. Water nearing shoulder height, steel complaining under crushing pressure. "Hale," I added, voice steady. "Prepare system disruption. When we move, he loses control." He nodded once. In that moment, the shift was complete. We were no longer reacting. We were advancing with purpose. And somewhere inside the control room, Viper was waiting, certain his design was closing perfectly. He didn't know yet. The battlefield had changed. And now we were coming for him. Hale wiped water from his visor and locked his wristline into a secondary junction panel, fingers moving fast despite the freezing pressure around us. "I can scramble his compartment controls in pulses," he said. 10 seconds at a time. That's all the system will hold." "Enough," I answered. The overhead lights ahead flickered once, then went dark. The corridor beyond us sank into black steel shadow, forcing anyone watching through the system to lose clean sightlines. We weren't escaping anymore. We were rewriting the fight. Mercer slid forward along the bulkhead, staying low, using the tight gaps between pipe clusters and valve housings to build narrow sightlines. No open angles, no exposure, just controlled fields of fire through steel and shadow. "Forward choke covered," she whispered. Torres straightened beside me, breath tight but steady. Brooks checked her seal one last time, reinforcing the pressure patch on her shoulder. "You're mobile," Brooks said quietly. Torres nodded once. Still in the fight. The water surged higher, pressing near our upper chest now, thick and freezing. Every movement dragged, every breath heavier as air mix shifted. The submarine groaned again, deep and violent, reminding us how little time remained. Controlled chaos. Calculated movement. No wasted motion. "Mark," I said. Mercer fired first. One suppressed shot through a pipe gap. A shadow collapsed ahead, weapon slipping into the water. At the same moment, Hale triggered his disruption burst. Somewhere deeper in the submarine, bulkheads misfired, one sealing early, another stalling half open. System confusion brief, but real. "Move," I ordered. We advanced through the narrow passage, shoulders scraping steel, boots dragging through rising water. Brooks guided the rescued technicians behind reinforced piping, keeping them low and silent. Torres held our flank, weapon steady despite the pain burning through her arm. Mercer shifted ahead of us, controlling angles none of us could see. Gunfire erupted suddenly from a side hatch, blind, uncertain shots. Mercer responded instantly, 2 precise bursts. Silence returned just as fast. "Hale, status. His control loop is destabilizing but temporary. He's rerouting, fast." Of course he was. This was his battlefield. But battlefields belong to whoever adapts fastest. Water climbed higher, touching our shoulders now. The submarine shuddered again, steel flexing under immense pressure. Oxygen thinning, time collapsing, movement slowing under exhaustion and freezing weight. Yet we did not fall back, because retreat here meant drowning. Seals choose where the fight ends. Another signal flickered across Hale's display. Multiple hostiles forming defensive line ahead, just outside control room. Guarding him. I checked my weapon, feeling the cold certainty settle inside me again. Every step, every loss, every mistake had brought us here. "Final approach," I said quietly. Hale prepared another disruption pulse. Mercer steadied her aim, through the narrow steel gaps. Torres tightened her grip despite the pain. Brooks secured the civilians behind sealed piping. The submarine groaned, lights flickering faintly like dying stars. Water surged. Steel strained. Pressure built toward collapse. Ahead, beyond the dark passage, waited the man who believed he controlled everything. We moved anyway, because this fight was never about escape. It was about ending the hunter. The passage narrowed until the steel felt close enough to crush breath from your lungs. Ahead, the control room hatch stood sealed, reinforced, silent, holding the nerve center of the submarine behind a wall of locked mechanisms and pressure doors. No light leaked through the seams. No sound escaped. Just presence. Waiting. Water pressed against my shoulders now, freezing and heavy. Every movement dragged. Every breath felt thinner. The submarine groaned under mounting ocean pressure, metal flexing somewhere deep below the deck. Emergency lights flickered dim red, barely cutting through drifting steam. Enemy movement echoed through the steel around us. Not rushing. Positioning. Encircling. Mercer's voice came low over comms. Multiple contacts beyond hatch. Tight formation. Defensive. Guarding him. Torres steadied herself beside me. One hand pressed briefly against the bulkhead to keep balance as another wave of water surged through the corridor. Pain burned through her shoulder, but her weapon never lowered. Brooks secured the rescued technicians behind a reinforced valve column, checking their air masks, keeping them breathing. Hale stared at the sealed hatch, fingers hovering over his disruption controls. Pressure rising, time collapsing. One mistake meant drowning inside steel. The submarine trembled violently, stronger than before. Somewhere aft, a compartment gave way with a deep, crushing roar. Water surged again, slamming into us, forcing us against the bulkhead. The air mix shifted, each breath heavier, slower. Hale finally looked at me, voice quiet but certain. No signal from fleet, no backup coming. I held his gaze, then nodded. Because rescue isn't guaranteed. Mission is. Mercer cover breach angle through valve grid. Set. Torres left sector, short bursts only. Ready. Brooks hold rear. Protect civilians. Locked. Hale, on my mark. Disrupt compartment control and blind the control room. His hand tightened over the interface. Ready. I stepped forward, gloved hand pressing against the cold steel of the sealed hatch. Behind it waited the architect of this trap. The man who believed pressure, isolation, and time would break us before we reached him. He was wrong. Because pressure doesn't end warriors. It exposes them. Mark. The corridor lights died as Hale triggered the disruption pulse. Mercer fired two suppressed cracks slicing through darkness, forcing movement beyond the hatch. I planted the breaching charge along the locking seam, water surging violently around us. Stand by. The submarine groaned again, long and deep, steel straining under crushing ocean force. Water surged higher, pressing against my neck. Time was ending. Detonation. The hatch blew inward in a violent burst of steam and metal. Water surged through the opening, dragging us forward into the dark control room. Gunfire erupted instantly, tight, deafening in the confined space. Mercer suppressed through narrow sightlines. Torres engaged left, steady and relentless despite the pain. Hale triggered another disruption burst, scrambling enemy targeting. Brooks held the rear, shielding the civilians, and I stepped through smoke, steel, and rising water into the final fight, where the hunter was waiting. Steam and seawater churned through the control room as we forced entry, the space tight and crowded with consoles, cables, and flickering instrument panels. Nothing cavernous, no open room. Just steel, machinery, and rising water swallowing the deck inch by inch. Red emergency lights pulsed weakly across faces and weapons, turning every movement into shadow and threat. He was already there, not standing in the open, not speaking, waiting behind the helm console, silent, weapon raised. Viper. No speech, no warning. He fired first. The round slammed into the console beside me, sparks bursting across my visor. I dropped low, returning fire through a narrow gap between control panels. Mercer engaged from the rear angle through a pipe break, her suppressed shots forcing enemy overwatch to fall back. One hostile collapsed across the sonar rack. "Hale," I called. "I'm cutting their targeting feed now," he answered. Lights flickered violently. Enemy optics lost sync. Their fire staggered, uncertain, broken. Torres moved, despite the pain tearing through her shoulder, firing controlled bursts across the compartment, pinning 2 hostiles near the navigation array. Brooks pulled the rescued technicians behind the armored control pedestal, shielding them from ricocheting rounds and rising water. The control room was collapsing into chaos, but not ours. Viper shifted position fast, using the tight console maze for cover. He moved like someone who knew the layout perfectly, forcing angles where space barely existed. Another shot cracked past my shoulder, close enough to feel heat through soaked armor. Water surged higher neck level now. The submarine groaned violently. Time was nearly gone. I pushed forward. He fired again, closer this time. I slipped on the flooded deck, slammed against the console edge, breath gone for a second. He was stronger, faster. For a moment, the fight tilted his way. Then the pressure shifted. A violent hull shudder knocked both of us off balance as another compartment failed. Water burst through a ruptured seam, slamming into us with crushing force. My weapon slipped from my grip, sliding across the submerged deck. Viper lunged. His hand locked onto my vest, forcing me backward into rising water. Steel dug into my spine. Oxygen thinning. Strength fading. For a moment, I was losing. Then, instinct took over. My hand struck blindly against the torn edge of a shattered console panel, jagged metal exposed. I drove it forward with everything left. Impact. He recoiled, just enough. I seized the emergency flare from my chest rig, ignited it, and drove the burning charge upward into his faceplate. A burst of blinding white light filled the compartment, reflected in flooding water and shattered steel. He staggered and fell. Silence, except for the roar of water and failing machinery. "Control secure," Mercer reported, breath tight. "Fire control vault isolated data module locked," Hale confirmed, hands flying over the console. "Hostiles neutralized," Torres said, voice strained but steady. "Technician safe," Brooks added quietly. The submarine trembled again, but the real fight, was over. Hale completed the shutdown sequence. The stolen fire control encryption key, locked inside the hardened NVMe module, remained secure. No launch authorization, no breach of naval command, no victory for the enemy. The trap had collapsed. Not because it was weak, because it underestimated who walked into it. Water filled the control room as we prepared emergency ascent, dragging the secured data module and survivors with us through the narrowing steel passage. Mission objective secured. Threat neutralized. And in the dim red light of a sinking submarine, the legend stood, not untouched, not unbroken, but undefeated. Weeks later, the sea looked calm again, flat gray stretching to the horizon, as if nothing violent had ever happened beneath it. From the pier outside the submarine pens, I stood watching the water move in slow, steady rhythm, breathing air that no longer tasted like pressure, oil, and steel. We made it back, not whole, not unchanged, but alive. Recovery took time, the kind that doesn't happen in ceremonies or headlines, but in quiet moments between missions. Chief Maya Torres returned first, her shoulder healed, her resolve stronger than ever. She had held the flank when the world was collapsing, and command recognized it. Her promotion came without noise, exactly how warriors earn things, through action. Ava Mercer received her commendation in the same calm silence she carried into combat. Precision under darkness, control under chaos. When sight failed and pressure rose, she never faltered. Jordan Hale restored the systems the enemy tried to corrupt. The stolen fire control encryption key never reached hostile hands because he refused to stop fighting, even when the battlefield was invisible, buried in signal and code. And Elena Brooks, she carried lives out of that submarine with her own hands. Her life-saving citation spoke only a few words, but behind those words were heartbeats that would have stopped without her. The mission faded from public knowledge, as most do. Another classified operation, another silent victory beneath the ocean. But for us, something remained, something deeper than survival. That trap beneath the sea was built for one purpose: to erase me. And it failed. Not because I was the strongest, not because I was fearless, but because real strength is quieter than people think. Strength is steady breath when the hull is collapsing. Leadership when mistakes carry weight. Courage when no one is coming. I still remember the pressure of his hand at my throat, the cold flood rising. The moment oxygen thinned and time felt finished, they grabbed my throat. But they never broke me. Because warriors are not defined by the battles they survive, they are defined by the lives they protect, the promises they keep, and the will to stand when standing feels impossible. Out there beneath the ocean rests a shattered battlefield that was meant to end us. Instead, it became proof of resilience, sacrifice, and honor. And as long as I wear this uniform, that lesson remains. If you want to hear more true stories like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button to Lady Veteran Stories and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from?